Good morning, everybody. This is Christopher, the Climate Guy, the lead forecaster at First Watch Weather, as well as the Ice Age 2050 YouTube channel. Today's video is about your winter weather forecast for the winter of 2018-2019. So while you're watching, please consider subscribing to my channel, and don't forget to press the like and bell. Thank you for watching. The first factor we got to look at when forecasting the weather for the upcoming winter is we got to look at what phase the El Nino Southern Oscillation's in, or ENSO for short. The warm phase of this, or the positive phase, is called El Nino, which is when we have warmer than normal temperatures in the equatorial Pacific. The cool phase is called La Nina, which is when we have cooler than normal temperatures in the equatorial Pacific. We are currently in a neutral phase, but forecasters say that we could be headed into a weak El Nino by wintertime, which is when we have slightly warmer than normal conditions in the equatorial Pacific. Now, it's not in the graphic, but when you look at the word van, that area is going to have actually slightly cooler than normal temperatures in a weak El Nino. So what's all this mean? Well, a typical El Nino setup, according to AccuWeather, this graphic here, overall, the United States has a mild winter. The East Coast gets to have the East and West Coasts tend to have wetter than normal conditions, and the frigid air stays well off to the north. During a typical La Nina, the wetter than normal conditions persist in the Pacific Northwest. There's more widespread dry area, and there's more shots of cold air, but overall the temperatures are still milder. But let's go back to previous winters. Go back to 2002, 2003, and 2009, 2010. The United States had a very cold and very snowy winter. Yes, the West Coast and East Coast had wetter than normal conditions that winter, but the temperatures were colder. That doesn't match up with an El Nino. That was during both 2009, 2010, and 2002, 2003. And let's go back to the previous two winters. Well, overall, the United States had a cooler than average winter last year and the winter before, and they were both La Nina winters. However, there was still widespread dryness, and there was wetter than normal conditions in the Pacific Northwest. So I've taken this to multiple meteorologists who agree with me that El Nino, La Nina have a bigger effect on precipitation than they do temperature. So that's what we got to look at when we have precipitation. And if we're heading to a weak El Nino, we could expect more precipitation along the east and west coast of the United States. So let's take a look at other factors, because that's just one of many. The North Atlantic Oscillation is a really big factor when it comes to forecasting what the temperature is going to be. So, the North Atlantic Oscillation, during its positive phase, the cold air retreats and it stays up towards the Arctic. The warm air this allows the warm air to pulled up by the Gulf Stream and other in the subtropical jet stream. It allows it to be more widespread. But during the negative phase of the North Atlantic Oscillation, cold air gets to plunge down into the United States with warm air towards the southwest. And right now, well, last winter, the North Atlantic Oscillation spent most of its time in its negative phase. And we had that endless winter between November and April, and all of a sudden when the month turned to May, we went straight to summer. We didn't have a winter, and that can be explained by the really the high positive North Atlantic Oscillation. So forecasts, according to the ENSM, we should be headed into the negative phase of the North Atlantic Oscillation by autumn time. And if that's so, if this does play out, then this means that we're going to be seeing a cooler than normal fall and a colder than normal winter with more snowfall. Other factors I got to look at are sunspots, and sunspots are currently in their minimum cycle. If we go back to previous winters during the late 2000s, early and mid 1990s, mid and late 1980s, late 1970s, and the 1960s, we had some pretty cold winters, and those were all at the bottom of solar cycles. At least most of them were. So that is another factor we got to look at. We're headed into a minimum cycle. We're going to have if low sunspots, we're going to have a cold winter. There's a very strong correlation with that. So overall, I think this winter is going to be cooler than average across much of the United States. Temperatures 3 to 6 degrees cooler than normal across the southeast, 2 to 5 across the parts of the deep south, as well as the southern Midwest and mid-Atlantic regions. 1 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit cooler than normal across the northeast, down across the upper Midwest, down into the Texas regions and parts of southern Tornado Alley. Near normal temperatures are going to be right around the Four Corners, Southwest, and Upper Plains, while warmer than normal temperatures, 1 to 3 degrees above normal, are going to be what's going to be happening up in the Pacific Northwest. So that's what I think is going to happen. And if we look at these snowfall totals, well, in the average conditions, it's going to be drier than normal across the Southwest, equal chances across the Pacific Northwest, down through Tornado Alley in the central U.S., and snowier than average conditions are going to from the eastern central United States through the Mississippi over towards the East Coast. I think it's going to be snowier than average, and it might be snowier than average through the eastern 2/3 of the nation, but I'm going to leave it at equal chances for right now. And I'm going to, since I live near D.C., I'm thinking, yay, sweet, we're going to have snowier than average winter, because if we didn't have a snowier than average winter, I was going to be, once again, madder than a blind man at a silent movie. So, according to Weather Bell Analytics, which is Joe Bastardi's site, we should be having 150% above normal snowfall. So for Washington, D.C., that's like 15 inches a year, so 150% of that's like 24 inches. So we get 24 to 30 inches of snow for the season, if not more. New York City, for example, they get like what, right around 36 inches a year or something like that. And so that'd be like 40 or 50 inches for the season. So we're going to have a pretty snowy winter, I think, especially for the eastern side of the United States. Drier than normal conditions across just parts of the Southwest. But overall, I think it's going to be a snowier than average winter and a colder than normal winter for the United States. Stay tuned for updates, and I'm going to tell you right now, because I can't make graphics for it, but I'm going to tell you that Canada, if the United States is going to have a cold winter, Canada is going to be having a pretty cold and snowy winter as well. And for Europe, guess what? Same thing, cold and snowy winter for you all as well, especially northern Europe. I think you're going to have the coldest parts of next winter, I think, are going to be in late December, all of January, and parts of late February and early March. I think that's going to be the coldest parts of next winter for Europe. Thank you all for watching, and please be sure to subscribe to my channel for the latest in real climate science, as well as stuff about the grand solar minimum. Thank you for watching, and please be sure to comment, like, and share.